Today's October 15th, 2007. We're here at the Circle Cinema in Tulsa. And we're pleased to have Mr. Ronald Al Wright of Skytook, who reached the rank of Tech Sergeant, a flight engineer in the Army Air Corps. Mr. Wright, thank you for joining us this evening. And we just asked if you would tell us your story.
Well, I was born in Jenks, Oklahoma, December 10th, 1920. After Hitler went into Poland, my stepfather said that we were going to be getting in the war. So he said, I would advise you to get in and get some training. So November 13th, November 1st, actually, I went to the office and volunteered. I was sworn in on the 13th of November 1939, and I left out of the States for Hawaii on the 16th of December of 1939. I had two spots that I could select when I joined the service. One of them was Hawaii, the other was the Philippines. I think anybody could realize the fact that I selected the correct place. For the first 2 years that I was in the service in Hawaii, it was just like a dream. We did our duty for 4.5 days a week, got off on Friday at noon, and we weren't required back until Monday morning. Now, December 7th was something that nobody could have imagined. The severity of the attack. Those people had practiced diligently and had it down right down to the last bomb and torpedo as to where they were going to attack us. Of course, they attacked the Army air bases first, because that would put the pursuit people out, flights out of operation, so that they couldn't interfere with what they had to do. And then they went about their business of dropping bombs, strafing, torpedo attacks, and it continued for the first, 7:55 on that morning, December 7th, is when the first attack began, and it lasted approximately an hour, and then they came back with a second attack, and a total of 183 aircraft attacked the island of Oahu that day. They did massive damage. The Air Force at that time we were Air Corps. We became Air Force in 1941. But the Navy was the primary target, naturally, of the Japanese, because they wanted to knock out any effect that our Navy could have on their illegal, and I guess you'd call it dastardly, attacks that they were making on all those foreign nations over there around them. They had been doing this for a number of years. They had just about knocked poor China down to its knees. They had attack plans for all the other outfits, all the other nations around over there. And so the December 7th attack was a very well planned and I guess well thought out. But just like Yamamoto, the admiral that thought the thing up and planned it all, just like he said after it was over, we have let loose a bear. And it was, because we went after him, and as you well know, it was kind of downhill for the Japanese after that. They won some here and there, but it wasn't to the point where they was effective enough to keep us from going ahead with our plans. Now, and I didn't get to Midway for the Midway battle, but the Midway battle was a turning point, in my estimation, of the whole war. We knocked out many of their carriers, which is what at that time had become the most important implement of war in the Pacific, because that's all water over there. And so to get people to and aircraft to and from a spot to engage in warfare, you had to have aircraft carriers. So when we knocked those out, I think that was just almost the phase that started those people downhill in their war efforts. Right after that, I went aboard a boat ship and was transported to Fiji in the South Pacific, where we picked up aircraft. I was put on a crew with our B-17s. We were all new to it. We hadn't ever flown in a B-17, and so we had 3 months of training there. We did all sorts of things. We did low-level flying, high-level flying, bombing, strafing, the whole gamut of warfare, until we felt we were proficient. And we were given orders then to transfer to Guadalcanal. And at that point, we went into a bomb squadron, and I was assigned to the 394th Bomb Squadron Heavy. That was in the 5th Bomb Group, and we had 3 other bomb squadrons in that group. And our method of warfare was 2 bomb squadrons would be on Guadalcanal, and we had a back base at New Hebrides, and the other 2 would be back there in practice and in going out looking for the enemy and trying to keep the area surveilled. And that we'd stay there 6 weeks, then we'd go back to the back base, as we call it, New Hebrides, and the other 2 groups would come up. It was, in my estimation, Guadalcanal, to me, because the Air Corps back at Hickam Field hadn't taken that much of a beating during December 7th, so I always considered the Guadalcanal episode as the most severe of my military experience. We not only had bombing from aircraft, bombing, strafing, and such as that, but the ground forces of Japan were still on the island, and they sent in artillery warfare on us, and also the Japanese Navy would make a sortie down to Guadalcanal or Solomon Island once in a while and bombard us with naval warfare. So of the 2 places that I happen to have been engaged in what I call severe warfare, I would consider Guadalcanal as the worst. I was there from November of 42 and came back to the States, or was given orders to come back to the States in the latter part of November of 43. And during that time, I experienced over 50 bombing 50 I've lost my train of thought here now, but we went over 50 times out on bombing runs for the Japanese areas around there, and they had many of them. We also did sorties out for surveillance, and this was quite a experience also, because you'd fly out for so long you'd think that you're going to run out of fuel, but then the pilot always was cognizant of the fact and would get us back. But it was things like that that I would consider my most horrendous memories. Now, we at that time that I was on Guadalcanal was under the authority of the Navy. Bull Halsey was our commander. The way they had arranged that over there, Halsey took half of the area, and our great general took the other half, and he had Australia and New Guinea, and Halsey had all of the Guadalcanal and Solomon area. It was horrendous living conditions. I don't know if people have ever been in an area where you could, when you'd walk along, that you couldn't see 3 foot in front of you because of swarms of mosquitoes, and you slept under mosquito net every night. You hung your clothing and all of your clothing from your shoes on up to the rafters of the tent with anything you could get to hang them up there, because of the moisture. They would actually overnight would mildew, and the rats were so big that they would carry off your socks and your underwear if you took it off. It was not a good spot to live in.
Was there a lot of malaria disease?
Yes, we had a lot of disease. We had dengue fever, we had malaria, and well, just the fact that you were under the tremendous sun all the time, and it was not uncommon for a person to have severe sunburn. We didn't have any bad animals over there, although in the Laguna River we had alligators, and that's where we swam and did our fun things. So you had to watch out for those, and it wasn't too bad in that regard. We had good food, and by the way, I always give credit to the Army cooks. I can't believe that those people could turn out food that was as delicious as that with the things that they had to cook with, or cook the food they had to cook. But they did a good job. They were well prepared and knew their jobs. And Spam, hey, I still love Spam. I don't care what people say. I've heard a lot of comments about, ooh, I don't like Spam. Well, hey, Spam is good, and we eat it today. Well, I've had a very interesting time during the war. I was always interested in the fact that we seemed to be learning their tactics. That was the thing that we had to learn when we got to Guadalcanal. We had never been in combat. Those people had been in combat for a number of years. They knew right down to the nth degree what to do now and 5 minutes from now. We didn't know. But before we left there, we were as proficient as they were in aerial warfare, and they knew it. And it didn't take long for us to overcome all their defenses and take them out. We even took out Yamamoto. The admiral that had planned that came to the Solomon Islands to make an inspection, and the Navy had been able to break into the Japanese code and had all the information that Yamamoto was coming and the day and the time, and they sent up a group of fighters from our Air Force, the 13th Air Force, and they shot down Yamamoto's plane, and he went in on one of the small islands there of the Solomons. And I have always thought that that was retribution for Pearl. It made me feel good. Now, I put in almost 6 years in the service. 4 of those were overseas. I went over December 16th of 43, and I came back the 27th of November I went over December 16th of 41, and I came back the 22nd of November of 43. So that was a few days short of 4 years. I had experiences that are something to write home about. And the first 2 years that I was over there in Hawaii was something that no one can imagine. The beauty and the calmness, and the Japanese people that were there were just, nice. And there wasn't any, as far as I knew, any illness between those people and us, even before the war and after the war. We went about our way of living, and there was no problems in that regard. Of course, our commanding officers of Hawaii were then, and both of them have been chastised to a degree, been put before the public as not smart enough to know that we were going to be attacked, but nobody knew that. It wasn't something that we even imagined. We couldn't imagine that those people would come that far and have enough power to do anything to us. And the only thing that our commanders were concerned about was sabotage. And we took every precaution in that regard. We had guards along the aircraft that were lined up that morning beside the hangars. We had guards in the perimeter. Why? We had it all covered. There wasn't any problem. So the problem was that they weren't going to sabotage us. They were going to attack us, which they did in great numbers. It was something that Navy people should be explaining to you, really, because it was horrible what those people went through. It was something that I don't know that I would have been a sane person after I went through something like that. Now, I had the person right next to me killed. We were laying under a temporary building. They were going to build up a section of barracks and things like that for the recruits that were going to be coming over from the States in a section on Hickam Field. And when the Japs attacked, the outfit I was with was the perimeter guard group. And when it happened, why, we all dispersed, and this person and we got down and crawled under this barracks, this temporary mess hall. And of course they were all made of wood, and when they strafed, the bullets came right on through. And this person laying just to my right under there took it through the back and killed. I had a contingent, the outfit I was in had a contingent of 190 enlisted and officer people, and of that we had 19 killed and 13 wounded. So it was we took a little bit of the flak, and it was about the same with most of the other outfits on the base. They all lost people, and it was something that you won't ever forget. But at the same time, you were always grateful that you weren't part of the naval personnel at Pearl Harbor. Since then, they've always just called it Pearl Harbor, and I can see that that's the perfect name for it because, like I say, they took the brunt of the attack. But you have to remember that those Japanese attacked every military base on the island of Oahu that day. They didn't miss one, even if it was inoperative, let's call it. They hit it, and they did damage to everyone. And we had a fear, a great fear after the attack that day that they were going to invade. And in my estimation, they made the biggest mistake of their war right there, that they didn't invade. They could have very easily taken us over because we were so, we just didn't have any cohesion after that for a couple of 3 days until we got back to that where we felt we were strong enough and all that to take care of it. Though we just worked ourselves to death getting everything ship shape so that if they did come in, we'd have them, and they didn't. And we have always felt that was something that we can be thankful for. Now, I lost my very, very best friend in the service that day, and I always think of him as a person that was very brave. Although we were all stupid, because what did we do when they came over? We ran out in the middle of the fields. We didn't have anything to fight back with. I had a .45 pistol on my hip. Those little Japanese coming across going from Hickam, they passed right by us going over to Pearl. I pulled out the pistol and fired my 5 shots at them, but I could have thrown the pistol and done just as well. But it was something that you feel like you've done the best you could.